like the idea.
That's funny.
Please, bring it on, Mike. Of course.
Did you hear that Jamie and my dad got the exact same tears that Jen's and I got? So they're in the 12 and the 15. In the Bengals.
Mr. Leonard.
Third.
All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. Welcome. Is it on? Yeah, I'm just not talking close enough. I have a really loud voice. I'm just kidding. My name is Allison Wady. I'm from the Vail Chamber and wanted to welcome you guys here today for our third installment of the Leadership Forum. Thanks for coming back after we had a great first year and then everything, went sideways a little bit, but everyone's rallied back and we've got everything back on track, which is great. So I just wanted to real quickly introduce Patty Mckinney from the town of Vail, and she's going to start us off here.
Thanks, Allison.
Patty Mckinney, Town of Vail. I know most of you, but really I just wanted to thank all of you, our panelists, for joining us today, and those of you watching on television and in person. Very quickly, the PRIMA Vail programming is an outcome of the Town of Vail and Vail Mountain and VCBA, who gathered a couple years ago and wanted to really take a focus on a seamless guest experience, so that if you are the guest in our town or on the mountain, it's all the same to them. So what was important to us was to collaborate on some programming that would give our employees some tools for communicating with the guests. And out of that came our guest service training, which hopefully some of your employees have participated in, as well as a very robust employee engagement offering from VCBA. And then finally, this leadership forum. And really, the leadership forum is meant to engage our employees, to really talk to them with community leaders, and for our leaders to sort of share with them their stories. So we've got a robust group here that I think has some fun stories, and I just appreciate everybody joining us, so sit back and have some fun, okay? Thank you.
Special thanks to the town of Vail, because they've been underwriting most of all of this, and we just wouldn't be able to do it without them, so thank you to them. Okay, so without further ado, I think we're just going to go down the row here, and everyone can introduce themselves, and we'll get started.
Thanks, Allison, and thank you and all the organizers for it, including me and all of us up here. My name is Kim Langmaid, and I'm on the Vail Town Council and Mayor Pro Tem right now. Been on the Vail Town Council for about 6 years. 2 more to go. I grew up in Vail, right over across the creek there, when it was a family neighborhood and the homes were about 1/4 of the size they are now. Grew up working in a guest serving environment for my grandfather and father, and we'll tell you a little bit more about it as we go on here.
Thank you, Kim.
Brian Nolan, celebrating my 32nd year in the Valley this Saturday. Owner and operator of a multitude of restaurants in Vail and Beaver Creek and other areas throughout the last 3 decades.
Hi everybody, I'm Will Nolan. I'm Brian's son, and I grew up in Avon, and I'm also owner-operator of Blue Moose Pizzas right now, working at both locations in Beaver Creek and Lions Head. And yeah, I grew up in Avon and just recently moved into Vail for the first time, so I'm in the zip code and excited to be here.
I'm Drew Riley, born and raised here. Basically, my dad's been here for 55, 56 years. He started Russell's back in 1989 and Los Amigos back in 1983 or 82, 85. So my middle name is Russell, and started operating the businesses in 2018 and graduated high school here, and yeah.
Michael Stoughton, not Ron Riley, but I worked for Ron Riley starting in 1976, because I arrived in 1974. A few more years than you, Brian, but I had my Volkswagen camper van headed west. My idea was Vail, Aspen, Sun Valley, Jackson Hole, and to end up in San Diego, partly because I was a tennis professional. I didn't have any knowledge of how to ski hardly. So I came here and milled around for about 11 or 12 days and came up Bridge Street, and all of a sudden there's all these people right around Cybert Circle, all dressed in outfits. And I take a look, and all of a sudden this hospital gurney comes to a screeching halt, chug a beer, have a shot, and go that way. And so I go like this to the person, I said, what's going on? They said, this is the great race. I decided to stay in Vail. Have not left.
Well, I don't want to follow that. As Marie Fessler, Director of Marketing for the Sonnenauf Hotel. Fessler by marriage, just want to clarify. So we're a little bit of a different family dynamic, daughter-in-law. So I only moved to Vail 4 years ago. Prior to that, did a lot of marketing for sports teams, actually. Background is in sports and market research, but love living here, love the town community, small town feel. I'm also the chair of the Vail Local Marketing District Advisory Council, say that fast. Basically, we market Vail in the shoulder seasons and in the summer. We've been doing such a great job, as you guys can tell. It's very, very busy. So, happy to be here.
Thank you.
Johannes Fessler, I'm born and grew up in Bavaria. Actually, I came here as a high school kid in 1979, and then went to hotel school in Denver, and then came back up in '83, and ran the Sonnenalp for our family ever since. I'm fourth generation of our family business, and as Marie and our son Sebastian is will be the fifth generation.
Wonderful. All right, I was just told by our tech team that we need to pull the microphones a little closer, please. Thank you. All right, great. So the way we normally do this is that we want it to be an interactive experience as well. So if you have questions along the way, they don't need to be saved to the end. Feel free to raise your hand, that kind of thing. I might have you come up here and talk in there because we are recording. But if there is something that you want, to expand on, we welcome it. So don't be afraid. All right, so getting into it, I sent questions to this great panel about a week ago. I think they've prepared some stuff, but we're gonna just see where it takes us. And our first question today is, since we have made this a family affair, what are the benefits of being in a family-owned and run business, and what are the challenges associated with it? Anybody want to start, or should I call on people?
I can start.
Okay, good.
I would say the benefits are pretty obvious. There's a lot of flexibility in what you're able to do and ideas you're able to bring to the table. We're having like Sunday dinner and talking about work. So it's like, which can also be a drawback. It never stops. But the biggest kind of piece that I like about it is nothing is off the table. And so we're not limited by red tape or corporation speak or anything like that.
Go ahead.
Well, just reflecting back on what it was like for me working for my parents at the ski shop down in Lion's Head there, I'd say the family culture extended to our guests and customers because we got to know them. They'd be returning every season, and it felt like an extended family with everybody we worked with in the shop, but then also the people who came there. So that was good. And then also it's kind of all hands on deck during the holidays around here. So we all would go to work, and we didn't miss out or on something like that. So we could celebrate Christmas in the shop and do those kinds of fun things.
Great. Anybody else? Will?
Yeah, I've got a quick complication. But it actually has to do with the Great Race, which you already brought up. But sometimes sitting around with my dad or anybody else, there's a lot of older people who've been at all these events that used to exist in Vail. And as a young person, I'm like, that sounds like the coolest thing ever. Where is the Great Race? And it's been an interesting experience having the conversations with him of why those events existed, and then how, as he grew up here and grew with the town, and joined the leadership of the town, they decided to change those events or move them into different styles. And part of the reason that the Great Race is so fun is because it's so free and a little bit lawless, I think. And
It certainly was lawless.
yeah, from what I've heard. But yeah, that's something that I look for in town too, is where is the fun being had, and is it happening that way because it's sanctioned, or is it happening in like a natural way?
I don't know where you think you're going to have time to participate in anything fun. To go back to the original question, honestly, it's one of the benefits is hanging out with your kid. And Pat and I are both excited to have him back, and his girlfriend's moving here soon, and to be honest with you, it's just like sort of a dream come true to get to this place. So there's that. And then challenge-wise, I don't admit nor think about the number that reflects my age very much at all until the last 10 days, sort of, since Will's gotten back. And it is amazing how different a perspective there is from somebody younger in this valley, and how interesting it will be to work together moving forward, understanding that it's a really good perspective. I mean, it's not, it's like, wow, what are we doing and why are we doing this? And it's really been complicated, but okay, I get it, I guess. So it's not a challenge, but I guess maybe it is a challenge, but it's a fun challenge, but it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, for me and my experience, my dad sort of faded out of the restaurants in 2014, and Michael was my dad's partner, and he ran the restaurants and wanted to retire in 2018. So that's when I got started in operating the restaurants. The biggest thing was just coming into a very well-established and well-functioning restaurant that Michael and my dad have set up for so long. I wasn't coming into something that was broken that needed to be fixed. But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword, because all of the employees and everybody that's been there for so long is very resistant to change in sort of any type, especially if the restaurant has been working very well for the past 5 years. And so, yeah, double-edged sword, but probably just having the restaurants be so established is very, very, I'm grateful for that for sure. And there was a lot of hard work that went into getting to where they are right now.
It's interesting when I think about it. When I got started, there weren't computers. And so when I was evolving, I self-taught myself everything, and I'm not very adept at it. So kind of when I was getting soon to the point of wanting to depart the business, he's a whiz in the computer side of it. So this is going to work well, and there's a difference in opinion between even him and I, even though we didn't interact very much, just a little bit when I left. But his thinking, like he said, change. It's an interesting word. And I have a feeling that some of the employees that are still at Los Amigos and or Russell's, having me around for 30 plus years, and my focus, it's a change. So I'm sure that a few people were maybe a little miffed, I think.
They'll get over it.
But that's okay. Well, they have to.
They have to.
Yeah.
Johannes?
Well, not that much to add, really. I mean, from a business perspective, I think continuity and consistency is the greatest strength of a multi-generational a business. And then I think for a resort community like this, it is it's a massive plus if there are certain things that really don't change all the time, that people recognize when they come back, and there is there's this continuity there, that the people find what they expect and what brings them back to begin with. So I think that's one of the biggest strengths, aside with what as Marie was saying, that we can make decisions on the fly. What is the biggest strength is probably also the biggest challenge, for sure. I mean, I grew up very, very young in doing things really here, and I'm sure Esmery and Sebastian go through the same thing, is where they come and say, man, you've been doing this for 40 years. Isn't it time to kind of change it really a little bit? Why are we not really doing this somehow different? And it's hard to let go of what works for you, right? And so it's a real danger to get stuck in what feels comfortable or what's really successful. And if you're not careful, then that can obviously become a problem. So to find that balance is a big challenge, particularly certainly as I get older. I know I get less flexible and more set in my way, and as a
He's not that bad.
I was gonna say, you're not alone either. It's okay.
I can be. Yeah, Rosanna keeps reminding me frequently, and she's most of the time right. So yeah, so it cuts both ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for bringing up the part about being in a resort. That kind of leads us into our next question of what has been your greatest challenges to sustaining your business in the resort environment, and how did you ever overcome those challenges and adapt to them? You want to start?
Can we all say housing at the same time?
Second.
No, I can tell. I thought about that one a lot, and then there's many pieces to this. Really, the resorts are unique in many ways, but the two ways that always created challenging situations for us is really what is necessarily perhaps good and desirable for making our business successful is not always what other people in the resort really like to see. And people that live in a resort live here. Many of them live here because they seek a certain lifestyle. And that means they want all the wonderful things like the ski mountain without lift lines, and the golf courses without having to make a tea time, and the restaurants where you can just kind of walk in and really the table is there, and the fact that a business can actually not really survive that way is not something that is necessarily on people's radar screen. So that's a conflict that we battle really frequently over the years, and it can become pretty frustrating. It also extends really to the labor force, that a lot of people that really come here, they're really not that interested necessarily in a career and working compared to maybe perhaps people that live in a big metropolitan area. And many of them just want to work just as much as absolutely necessary so they can actually do all the other stuff. And if you want to run a high-performing business, it's really pretty hard to do with people who are just kind of halfway engaged most of the time. And yeah, those are certainly really a couple of things that immediately come to mind that make it challenging.
Yeah, I just want to add on that, like the extremes of how busy Christmas time is or 4th of July is versus right now or October, end of October, beginning of November. Like it's tough to keep full-time staff around for that, because Los Amigos, we run with 8 servers for 4th of July, and right now we've got 1. And just like keeping all of those people on and giving them income and food and stuff like that, like it gets to strain the restaurant a lot, and everybody's like that.
Yeah. I would add to that though that challenge of the seasonality swing in 32 years ago was a lot more dramatic valleys and mountains than it is now, and to the credit of the town of Vail and the Beaver Creek Resort Company and Eagle County and everybody involved in Romer and airline programs and CSE, LMDA, and, you know, we can go on with all the acronyms. You know, we've changed the face of the business model here. I mean, a challenge originally getting here in '89 was how to make enough money in 140 days to survive the remaining part of the year to get back to making enough money in 140 days. And interestingly, you know, if you talked with Jeff Forbes after the first year we had the Coyote, we didn't understand the cycle as, we knew what the cycle was, we didn't understand it. So, you know, the first spring, we both, you know, we're at New Orleans Jazz Festival in Mexico and Florida, and, you know, we got back on May 28th with no money. And you know, literally none to pay staff and move forward. So, you know, I think if you've been back in those days, you really learned how to manage loss as much as how to manage profit. I mean, you really had to figure it out, but that has changed dramatically. I mean, the VEAC this morning, I mean, you know, 37% up in the month of July, you know, the biggest July this town's ever seen. It's, you know, it's crazy what's happening. So the old days was a challenge for sure to get through those 7 months.
About the old days, as I can speak for Mr. Ron Riley, we had a very good relationship with Roger Beeler at the First Bank. And it's called a line of credit. And my goal was always to see how long was it that I could keep us from having to use it. And when we opened Russell's in 1989, Ron and I didn't get a dime for 7 years. That's how long it took to go through those cycles of the 140 days. But I'm going to give a little kudos to the Vail Chamber for the events that have been generated for, 10, 15 years now in the summer? Because the summer used to be kind of grim, except for the 4th of July. Now, with so much of that going on, you could look at that as a very positive event. I'll tell you a little story on Mick Worth. So some of you might know Mick. He worked for me for 20-odd plus years. And so I said to him one time, I said, Mick, I said, if you can get this restaurant, this was Russell's at the time, so that I never lose a dime, and every month I'll pay for a trip around the world for you. He never got to go. Of course, we joke about it because it was certainly unrealistic.
I'll just add one more point. I can remember when I was young at the ski shop up at the top of Bridge Street, and at the end of the ski season, we would put a white piece of paper sign on the front door that said, "We'll see you back on December 1st," you know, because the whole place would shut down for the summer. And so it has come a really, really long way since then. You know, it's a very, very different place than it used to be then. I think the challenge is every single day matters, you know, in terms of making it. And the local banks, very helpful, yes. Most of you know that I went on to start Walking Mountain Science Center, so I did not continue with my dad's business. We talked about it, but I decided that I had another passion. So developing that business, Walking Mountain Science Center, in the early days was challenging too, because of the resort environment and not always having that, I said, maybe consistency and presence and number of people here all the time, and also having that fun environment sometimes doesn't lend itself to taking things seriously. So, you know, those are all challenges and opportunities.
Right. Anyone else? No?
I'll add something quick real fast, just because you brought up Walking Mountains. I think that it's interesting the challenges you guys are talking about financially back in the day, and I think that's kind of where some of our disagreement comes from, or just different understanding, because I think the challenges are a little bit different that are facing our generation. A lot of it has to do with environment and sustainability, and I think that that's where my focus goes to. We have to keep the capital aspect and the revenue coming in, but those events for us are like settled, they're there now. So coming in, yes, there's an opportunity for growing that, but there's also opportunity to start reflecting about the place that we live and maybe taking care of it a little bit better.
Kim likes that answer too.
I'm with you, Will.
Perfect, bookends.
So we talked to, everyone, said before, tongue in cheek a little bit, saying housing at the same time, but obviously that is a big challenge here. And when it comes to being able to attract and retain quality employees. So are there any innovative ways you have kept employees motivated in the past? And most recently, how do you encourage and support employees who may be short-timers, just coming here for a season, to your point, Johannes, and such, to engage with the community, set roots, and hopefully stick around for longer? It's a loaded one. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that loaded. I mean, I don't know that we have a silver bullet solution for that. I think what we find, everybody is different, and then I think the key is to find out where people are and what they want, or if they even know what they want, and figure out something that really works for them. I mean, generally speaking, we found that it's generally helpful and successful if you create an environment where people can actually enjoy living here and not just coming here, to work from sun up to sundown and never really participate in what makes this kind of a special place. So we try hard to figure out a way how to balance that really for them. And then there are certainly enough people here who that really come here to kind of build their resumes and actually learn something. And if you find that out and can provide that, the chances are that they actually will stay a little bit longer. And so it varies greatly. I think generally everybody wants to be on a winning team and then be in kind of a fun, upbeat environment. And if you can create that, and sometimes we're better at that than others, then I think we tend to be more successful.
Yeah, and from a tactical standpoint, I mean, you used to have one HR person, now there's 6. And their focus is strictly on employee well-being and incentivizing and fun and benefits and housing. So, I mean, that's a tactical way that you kind of handled that, or we handled that. Today, we just had a benefits presentation. That's a big incentive for our employees. We pump a lot of money into employee health benefits in hopes of incentivizing them to stay and to work for us in the first place. And then obviously building a employee housing building, not everyone has that capability, but that's another tactical asset that we have now, so.
Yeah, I'd add on to that, say, just kind of balancing both the intrinsic and the extrinsic motivations for people. Like, really that intrinsic motivation, helping people tap into their passions and talents and helping them find the right position within the organization. And then extrinsically, definitely, those benefits and the culture and the lifestyle and just, trying to help people put it all together and helping people see the career pathways and progression that you can make, once you get committed to something.
I sometimes feel a little bit like a matchmaker in some ways, because over the years there are so many of our employees that met here. They came on J1 visas or whatever, or came for a winter or two, and they met, they got married, and have their own families. And if you look back over 30 years, I mean, there's a large number of that, and it is really kind of cool to see, and you just know, and then you later on kind of get to know those folks a little bit, and that was clearly not their plan nor their intention or anything like this. Just like, Mike, when you came here, right? It's just kind of stumble in here and stuff kind of happens, and to be to be the place that makes those type of things happen is actually pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say, like what Johanna said of having people take advantage of our surroundings is the biggest aspect. Also, one of the things that I'm working on is getting to know all of my employees better than just on a name basis. Sit down and talk to them, make them feel welcome, make them feel respected, make them feel appreciated. One of the things that maybe it's unique to Russell's and Los Amigos is that there was always a end of the winter employee party. And I've heard some stories of some of the shenanigans that went on this
heavens,
employee,
no.
on these employee parties. But, I definitely want to keep that up. So this last year for Los Amigos, we went axe throwing, and I told everybody to bring their significant other in hopes to, bring their boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, and really get those roots. And at Russell's, we always like to go out to a nice dinner, and Russell's covers the tab, and just showing that appreciation of the employees, because they're the ones that are in the trenches taking the grenades all the time. And so respecting that, acknowledging that, and just trying to support them is the best way that I found to retain employees. And Michael did that really well. Russell's is lucky that there's a significant number of employees that have worked for us for 15 years plus. So that the culture and all of those factors, but those are the big ones.
We've got I feel like we have a lot more J1s and short-term workers at the Blue Moose, but one of the main things that we utilize, or that I would recommend utilizing, is the Vail Rec District, and anything in Edwards. Fieldhouse, same thing. We've got a soccer team at the Fieldhouse. 2 years ago, we had 2 soccer teams because we had so many people who wanted to play. And even the people who aren't participating in it, when all those employees go back to work, they're hearing about the soccer game and if Blue Moose won or not. And it's just a good time. Rec District has a lot of options between 2 or 4 people for cornhole or whatever it is. I think that adds a lot. There's a lot of online stuff too if you want, like fantasy football.
We offer HBO to everybody at Russell's.
Come work for us.
Yeah, just a little different twist of an answer. I find it interesting that in the last 3 and possibly as much as 5 years that there are more people here. This probably has something to do with the sale of the chop houses and the move to focusing on the 2 pizza restaurants, but there are more people here now that are here to actually work all winter and are not skiers or boarders, and they're here for a mountain experience, but it's not particularly focused on sliding down a hill as much as it used to be. Again, going back to '89 to the first 10 years here, everybody here was here to ski, either to ski and stay here and figure out how to do that, or to ski for 4 months and work 2 jobs and try and figure out how to get on the mountain. But I look at our staff now and how many do or don't board or ski, and in the last couple of years, and it's definitely, it's changing, and I think that's a real positive statement, that people are coming here to live here for an alpine experience, but not particularly a focused ski experience. It gives us a different group of people to work with.
That's great.
Just the one thing I can mention after what Drew said is that at Russell's, our head guy in the kitchen is Luis. His brother works for Russell's. His 2 sons have worked for Russell's. And the culture of the Hispanics is, that's what happens. Same thing up at Los Amigos. The gentleman who's in charge of the kitchen, I was up at Los Amigos 2 weeks ago, and Rodney said, "See that gal over there?" And I said, "Okay." He says, "That's Bola's daughter." So, the culture of some of the people that are here is how to keep, your staff. And some of like Luis has worked for us for 25, 26, 27 years.
Yeah.
And when he tells the boys that they have to come to work, they come to work.
Yeah, it's about treating your employees correctly and treating them like other humans and other, people that have lives and have social lives, and giving them the respect so that they want to come back and work. It's not just all about the perks and the party at the end of the year. It's the environment that you have that people stick around for 25 years and bring their friends and bring, everybody along those lines.
So Brian, I want to touch a little off script here, but something that you said interested me when you said that they're coming not to the normal motivations of what we've seen. I mean, when I moved here 22 years ago, it was because I wanted to be here and I went to ski all season. But so what are you seeing as ways to keep people here and motivated if they're not partaking in kind of our biggest recreation opportunity that we have to offer? I mean, what are the differences of their motivations, or is it a generational thing and they're just looking for experiences just in different places where they grew up?
I'm going to answer anecdotally because I actually haven't asked enough of these folks, and there's a handful of them, but I think they're building a resume. I think, again, having gotten out of the higher end steak business and the sushi stuff and gotten the pizza, that, the group we've got now, it used to be a beautiful thing because we'd get him at the Moose and then we'd send him to the sushi and we'd send him to the steakhouse, and there was this beautiful growth pattern. It's different now for us. But I think some of these folks are here building a resume. I mean, saying that you were a manager or that you were leading a kitchen or that you were working in, Vail, Colorado, Beaver Creek, Colorado for 5 years and going somewhere is it's noticeable. It's not a small thing. So I think there is that part of it. And they're still here for an alpine experience. It's just not a focused ski and snowboard experience. And this is not a large group, but I've noticed it, and I feel like there's more. And I'll be honest with you, anybody here knows me. I mean, I am not a skier. I mean, I got 63 days in 1 year, and I was single and wasn't dating anybody, and literally had, I was like, oh, I'm gonna ski a bunch this year. But past that, I didn't come to Colorado to ski on any level. I came to Colorado to be in business, and maybe that's why I might notice it differently than others. But there's definitely a group of these folks, and building a resume, building a career, and honestly yearning to create enough savings and wealth to possibly buy a place to live here, which is a contradiction on some level because it's gotten so difficult to get to that point. So I think a lot of folks get here and think, this is where I want to live, and I can fish, and I can bike, and I can hike, and do alpine things, and then after 2 or 3 years, they're like, yeah, maybe I can't. Maybe this isn't going to work. So, we're not going to figure that out today, but I think that's part of why some of this group is here. A couple of reasons.
Interesting. Anything else to add? No? All right. We'll move on then. All right, this is more of a personal question for each of you as leaders in our community, but who do you look to as a mentor, leader in your career, and what did you learn from them?
Interestingly, I got this quiz from my son recently. He asked me about, give me the names of 3 people who have mentors who have inspired you, and without getting into the gruesome details of all 3 people, I'll answer the question easily by saying Clemens Walsh, who is a dear friend, Austrian, and runs a beautiful hotel in our sister resort, Lek. And he is second, 2.5 generation operator of their hotel, and his son, Timmy, and daughter, Sky, will be taking that over. And it's earlier I said it was a dream come true, having Will back. Every time we're in Lek, every time we go, the number one takeaway is, you get on the plane, and then for a month to 6 weeks, I'm just overwhelmed with, all right, I got to figure this out. I mean, I got to pass this down. We got to do a family thing because it's just so beautiful, the whole process over there of how they interact and how they work and the level of hospitality that they offer. I come back embarrassed by where we think we are here because we're in a really great place, but we're so far away from where they are. And I come back totally motivated to work with Will and move to the next place by what they do over there on a generational basis. So it's an absolute inspiration to hang out with those people, especially Clemens and his wife.
To give ourselves some credit on that end, though, a lot of the people in Austria, a lot of those families are 6th or 7th generation in a mountain town. So you see it, and to your point earlier about the consistency factor of having a family-run business or just a generational business, people who've grown up in the area and understand, we're a little bit behind that. Like most of us here are 2nd generation. This panel at least is 2nd generation situation. So we have some time. To get to that level.
Who's your mentor?
Mine?
Yeah.
Growing up in the restaurants, Jay McCarthy was my mentor. He is just like, he was the executive chef of the business for a long time, and he kept it fun. Like, it was the fun aspect in the restaurant, and I really appreciated that. And it was also paired with just an incredible knowledge of food, and he showed me how to do everything. Most of the things I've learned in the kitchen just related to chopping up lobsters, and from that to cutting onions and doing the basic stuff. So, yeah.
It's Uncle Jay's birthday today.
I didn't know that.
He's not an uncle.
I guess I could say, since I was never in the restaurant business before I got here, my mentor really, and many of you may remember him, was John Kemmer. And John started here back in the early 60s, even before your dad got here. And he had a restaurant, which is now what, Fall Line is what it's called, because Clock Tower or whatever was in there. And he and I would sit and talk, because I'd go up Bridge Street, and that time he had the toy store, you know, and I'd sit on the stoop and talk with John and George Knox too, by the way, you know, to pick these older guys what they had up here. And John's biggest thing that he said, don't be afraid of risk. And I said, well, all you guys started in the 60s. It was a big risk, and I learned that, you know, taking so long to get one restaurant profitable in 7 years. But that's really stuck with me, is you're not going to get a whole lot if you don't take risk when you come to Vail, Colorado, especially back then. And Drew's dad came in 1967, I think. Can't remember. Maybe it was earlier than that. But by 1969, he owned the building that Russell's is in. And he always took risks. And he was a really, I consider, I learned a lot how to be an entrepreneur from him.
Yeah, I'll go, I guess, after that. I mean, definitely my dad, you know, my dad, again, left the restaurant industry in 2014, and, you know, that was a time that I was starting another business on the East Coast after getting my master's degree in mechanical engineering, and so, you know, it wasn't gonna always set in stone that I was gonna come back and operate the restaurants. Moved back to Denver, met my now wife, and then started working in the solar engineering firm, and it just sort of happened. So through that, like, I've grown up in the restaurants, but if there's anything that I know, it's that I definitely don't know everything. So one of the things that I am working on is working on just my personal network of, you know, business leaders and other restaurateurs in Vail. You know, recently I called up Matt Morgan at Sweet Basil, I called up Mike Dunlap, and I called up Cameron Douglas just to bounce ideas off of them about the employee, you know, housing and, you know, shortage of employees and stuff like that, just to figure out what everybody else is doing. And I would love to share anything that I'm doing with any of the other business owners, just so that all business owners have a chance to succeed and flourish within Vail, because then everybody does better. So I also work with a restaurant coach every week for a couple hours, just because I don't know everything. So I'm trying to just do the best that I can and make decisions with what I have. So, you know, the community as a whole, I guess, is a short answer.
That's great.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I could really name a single person that I consider a mentor. I'm always was more interested in people that inspire me by a certain thing that they do really well, and there's many of those examples really in our own family, of course. But then, I think what I've always enjoyed doing is just kind of look around in the world and see where things are done really, really well, and then copy everything I can, and then and learn from that. I think an example of what that kind of looks like is a Vail example of what that looks like is when we started to grow a little bit in the mid '80s. Vail for us was actually kind of a depressing place, and we were really looking really elsewhere because the energy just really wasn't right. And along came George Gillette at that time, and for me that was an extraordinary inspiration with the energy and the vision that he brought, and all of a sudden we were talking about ski mountain extensions, building new lifts, bringing a Stedman clinic here, expanding the airport. The whole conversation just absolutely changed within in a few years. At that time, it was also when the rankings in the ski magazines were kind of new and came out, and I think in the first run of that, Vail was, I don't know where it was, but it wasn't anywhere close to number one. And all of a sudden there was energy around, why are we not number one? We need to be number one. What do we need to do to really get there? And that is the type of stuff that really inspired me and made us do the things we really ended up doing. But it's people like this who have a vision that is out of the box and is just big and courageous, and they figure out a way to actually at least take a few steps in that direction to make it happen, that I see as my inspiration and my people that I come closest to being my mentors, I guess, without them knowing it.
I just think it's interesting to listen to the generational differences in like mentorship, right? Like change was so much more possible back then. Like you were looking for that, like what can we do? How can we get better? And I think it's hard for us younger folks on the panel because things are kind of running as they should now. And so like my mentor is actually an old boss of mine, and it's much more personal and selfish kind of reasoning versus like yours is like for the community and for town as a whole, so like my mentor wouldn't help any of you because it's really just very specific to me. I mean, she's great, but
I was lucky enough to benefit from the mentorship of so many people growing up here. I worked for the Kemmers, the Gorsuches, the Gramshammers, so many others, because just as it is now, it's kind of all hands on deck. When you're a kid growing up here, you would kind of work at whatever business needed you, especially during the holidays. So I got to know a lot of different people. We would go during Christmas, from one shop to the next, doing all of the Christmas wrapping until it was done, and then move on and on and on. So it was always ready for the next day. But so I definitely, looking back in terms of character development, I benefited a lot from these early business pioneers and startups and their visions for what this place could become. But I would say there's one person who really stands out the most, who really has made a tremendous impact on this town. And, maybe the 80s were a bit of a doldrums, but, there was some energy before then and after then, and I think it continues. And so I'd say one of my biggest mentors is Terry Minger, and he was one of Vail's very first town managers, and he brought a special spirit to this town when it was just getting started. And he recognized the magic of this place, the landscape, the community, kind of the essence of mountain life, and had a vision for how places and experiences can really elevate all of it. And he went on after being here as a town manager for many years to help start Whistler, and then also to Sundance. And he's continued to consult and help mountain communities. And I think he's been involved in the Vail Alliance for Purposeful Living, which is on its next iteration, and all of those characters who are involved in that have had a great influence on me. But one of the things that he says is, that Terry was really well known for, is the spirit of a place and the architecture of a place and those special gathering places. And so I think, looking ahead, I think the opportunity with the Vail Civic Plan, the Vail Civic area, that's an opportunity to bring in some change and some vision and create the next iteration of what happens here, both for our guests and our community long term. So I think just having that ability to look ahead, what's next, you know, what's gonna keep us at the top and exciting, great place to live and a great place to visit.
Great. All right. We will move on. Okay, so this question, we've asked it at all the other forums, so don't feel like you're being singled out for this one, because it is personal as well and stuff. But what has been the darkest day or leadership fail that you have had in your career? How did you get through it or learn from it? Who wants to go first?
I
Brian,
can
you want to
start.
go first? You're the
Go ahead.
I know, Kim can.
Well, I mean, in the early days, as a startup with Walking Mountain Science Center, I mean, there were times, and I didn't pay myself for a couple of years either, you know, just kind of living on the credit card, working part-time and doing what I needed to do. But making payroll was always a very big challenge, and getting sleep, you know, during those days when it was difficult. But turning those, I wouldn't say it was a failure, it was just very, very challenging, but turning that into an opportunity and reaching out to the amazing generosity that exists in this community really turned things around. So, I mean, I think those failures and challenges can, in this special place, turn themselves into great opportunities as well.
The Nolan guys up here talked about this probably more than any other question. A little bit we did talk about this, and I'm sorry, I haven't had a dark day yet, and I hope that's okay, but you know, we grew fast and got to Steamboat, and there was a time where I'd go to bed thinking, okay, lost another $3,100 today, and just fall asleep and get up the next day and try and work through and past that and how to fix it. So, I mean, there's been failures, and honestly, without them, I don't think I'd be the person I am. I learned as much, if not more, from those than the successes. But, you know, to get up here and to be in these mountains and to ride bikes, hike, or walk, or drive, you know, I'll talk to my brother in Houston, he's stuck in traffic, and I'm like, I'm stuck in traffic too, but who cares? I mean, you know, look at this view. That was when there were streetlights in Avon. But I really looked at that question, and there hasn't been that moment.
See, that's a good answer too.
Knock on, I hope that's wood.
I think what I'm going to go with is, for one of my larger failures, we hired a manager in my first season as a general manager, and he was a really capable manager, like better employee than a lot of the opportunities that come around. And because of that, I overlooked training him to the fullest extent right at the start of the season, and was focused more on getting the things done that we needed to get done, like the new hire influx, and just taking care of some of the things that I could have done a better job training him to do, knowing that he would be an asset moving forward. But he was smart enough to understand that he wasn't getting the attention he deserved early in the season, or setting him up for success properly, and he moved on. So that was, that was a failure, and I learned a lot from it, same as everybody else. But
That's great.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Like, you know, hiring new people is always the toughest part of just making sure you found the right fit, and, you know, making them feel welcome and supported is very difficult. Before I moved back to Colorado, I was trying to start a tech company, and it was a like a networking app, basically. Like, you utilize and leverage your connections that you already have through school or through just your life experiences to help you grow and expand your, you know, your business, your whatever you're doing, and basically just a networking app. You know, raised close to $1 million, and it completely failed, and it's, you know, up in company heaven, and that was the biggest failure. So it was fun, but you learn so much more from your failures than your successes. And you know, if I've learned anything, it's start small, try something fast, and get data, and use that data to start something, you know, go on to the next iteration of it, and not invest a significant amount of money into something that you don't necessarily know is going to work. There's a time and place for that, and taking a risk, but, you know, best and easiest way is to start small and take iteration, get data, and use data-driven decisions.
I'm gonna concur with Brian. I don't think I've had a dark day in Vail, Colorado. It's always been fun. The one thing I will say, and this was certainly an interesting learning experience, I don't know, middle of October, I think. I can't remember how many years ago, 30 plus. I get home I go up Piney Lake, and I'm chopping firewood. Because, you know, you can go up there and you do it, and you got a fireplace, so you need firewood. So I do that. I get home, and my phone rings. And it's Phyllis Riley. That's Ron's sister. At the time, she was doing all the bookkeeping and all the stuff for the business. Some of you might remember the Slope, you know. So way downstairs, you go by the men's and ladies' bathrooms, and you go all the way to the end, you turn right, and you look over by the ice machine on the floor. There's a safe. That's where we put all our money, in the safe, right? She calls me, because she says, Michael, do you know where the safe is? I said, it's where it's supposed to be. She said, no. And we figured it out. We'd never caught the person, or two. Number one, we had the Slope and we had Baxter's up above. So usually when one of them was done, the closing person in the other one would, you know, do everything, put the money away, walk up and lock the door. But if you remember the Slope, it's pretty easy to lay down on the slope where you used to half lay down to watch the movies anyway. So we concluded that probably a couple people stayed down there. Boom, everything's done, and they go investigate, and they find the safe. My lesson was, you bolt it to the floor. It was not bolted to the floor. So we presume it was two people to be able to pick it up, walk out the back door, and you go up, and there's Cybert Circle, and you look around at 11:30 at night, dark. You know, 30-odd years ago, there wasn't anybody around.
There's
Off
no
they
cameras
went.
like now either.
Off they went with all of our $492 for the night. Because we weren't that busy.
I'm gonna let Johannes go because I have a feeling I know what story he's gonna tell.
Oh, yeah, you do? I don't know any. No, I mean, the darkest days, it's interesting because, you know, growing up in Germany, I think things are generally, the highs are less high and the lows are less low. And when we kind of first came here and had this new business, highly leveraged, and then just depending on that it somehow works. But it seems like every 10 years or so in this country, something really bad happens. So in the mid-'80s, there was a real estate crisis that really hit Vail really hard. And then, you know, and then obviously there was in 2008 our big bust, and then there was 9/11, and then there's COVID. So it seems like every 10 to 15 years or something, something like this happens. And if you're in a business that really relies that every year is actually a successful year, and you cannot really afford very much to not have that. I mean, I just remember so many days when I just couldn't sleep a minute because I just absolutely did not know what is coming here and how to really deal with that. And it turns out, I mean, I have certainly learned that there's opportunity in those type of situations. So so I have learned to really deal with that. But in the beginning, that was really hard. And I think if you're the fourth generation of a family business, you really don't want to be the one that blows it up. That is really not a thought that is easy really to deal with. So that's on the dark side thing, and total leadership failures. There's many. The one that still really bugs me, and that was one that we own the golf course down in Singletree, and golf was always something that I just love, and that just always fascinated me, and as an extension of our resort business. And I just put it in my brain that somehow to make this just the absolutely best well-known course, and it's just something I really wanted to do. And then so we tried all kinds of things. And one of the things we tried is we thought it's really important to land a major tournament. And you probably remember those years when once you kind of go down that road, you meet people and then all this type of stuff. And I put an extraordinary amount of effort and money kind of into this to kind of move this forward. And then we ended up hosting the as kind of what was kind of intended to be the beginning, not the end of the story, to have the Colorado Open here for a few years. And I should have just seen this coming, but this was just such a bad idea. And so much effort and money spent for really basically very little return. And and then the takeaway from this is how do you get it right, where the effort and the money you invest into something has a realistic chance of giving you the outcomes that you really need, and step away and get your own ego out of the way, where you just get stubborn about it and then say, no, I make this work, although it's clearly not going to work, and then to be able to really see that. That one still hurts.
Yeah. The story I was hoping he would tell is when we remodeled the hotel way back in the day, and they were pushing up to get it ready by Christmas. And so they opened just in time for Christmas, and a guest calls down and says, is there supposed to be a door on the bathroom? And they forgot to put bathroom doors on all the rooms. Maybe not as big of a learning as...
That is a true story.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. It would go well with the open concept thing that's so ingrained in all of our design decisions these days. Esmer, do you have a leadership story?
I think for me, I mean, I haven't been in the hospitality business for that long, as I mentioned in the beginning, but something I'm trying to avoid failing at is, my mother-in-law actually told me this, and it actually comes from your mother, is you cannot run a hotel if you do not know your staff or your employees. And so her thing is always like, you better know who's working in the kitchen, who's in the back that you don't see, and you better know all their names. And you better believe it, when Oma's in town, she goes back there. And so I'm trying to kind of take that advice and really get to know everyone we work with. And I have not done a great job in these last 18 months, I will admit. And so for me, that's a bit of I wouldn't call it a dark day, but it's, I'm at the hotel once, twice a week, and people don't know who I am, and I'm like, oh boy, that is not good. So that's something I'm working on to just kind of keep that legacy alive, and I think that's part of the reason why people enjoy working for Johannes so much, is he really does know everyone, and there's hundreds of employees there, and so it's a big shoes to fill, but working on it.
That's great. That's good. All right, moving right along. This is one that's always a favorite. How would you describe community leadership, and why is it important? Because that's why we're here, right? I keep hearing all the same themes of
Yeah.
a wonderful
Oh,
place that we
I'll
live.
start. It's actually kind of an easy one, really, for me. It's pretty clear to me that there's absolutely no way that a Sunlight can be successful in a town that is not successful. And it's also very clear that there's tremendous overlap of what that really means, what we have to do well, and what the town has to do well. And be it, you can just frankly really go down the list. So it's really kind of easy. The things that we have to be successful are also things that the town needs to be really successful, and that's always the way I kind of always kind of looked at it. And if we can, and oftentimes, as long-term residents and business owners here, I think we are actually in a position where we can influence certain things that they actually move forward, because government is not always all that focused from a long-term perspective. They become sometimes very tactical, and they run a little bit in this direction and then don't get anything done, and then they make a 180 and run the other direction. In the meantime, really a lot of effort is taken and nothing actually gets really accomplished. But we as long-term locals and business owners can really bring just a different perspective to it. And in many ways, I think we can also by going down that road as a good example, and showing that it actually works, can influence those type of decisions. If you want to use employee housing as an example, we cannot really afford for the town to finally figure out how to solve the really employee housing problem. It just takes too long. It's too complicated. There's too many things that pull into different directions. But what we can do is show how it's done on a small scale, and then maybe help connect the dots for how that small scale can be leveraged and can be made into something bigger to actually solve a bigger problem. So yeah, that's just a couple of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I want to definitely echo that. Like, having everybody in Vail business-wise, we're all fighting the same battle. It's not Los Amigos versus El Segundo. It's we are both on the same team trying to make Vail the best that it can be for all of the guests that come in. So to be, leaders within the community, everybody has to get together to really fight this battle and try to be on the same page as much as possible and get support from the other restaurants, because that's how Vail is going to perpetuate into the future and still maintain its, being the most incredible ski resort arguably in the world. Like, everybody needs to be, sharing and helping to all business owners, and so, it's hard to lead everybody into battle if everybody's running different directions and not actually focusing on the goal. So that's what I think, and yeah.
I think it comes down to, we can talk about it, but you actually have to be involved in order to be a community leader, right? You need to step in, lead by example, but also show up when it's important. And when you need to vote, you need to vote. When you need to be somewhere because there's a discussion happening, then you need to show up if you want to fill that role. And being a leader, people look to you, so your input is obviously valued. And so I think we need to just remember that, especially in a small town, and hearing all these old stories about back in the day. That's what people were doing without even trying. And I think in today's world, we just need to step it up a little bit, so we can all meet these common goals that we have.
Yeah, I think that strength in numbers is a good thing, and I'll look at Matt and say, when Kevin Clare started the Restaurant Association eons ago, and I'm talking 35 years ago, and it faded and drifted away. And then Brian and I and Rodney Johnson, some of us got it together. And to get people in the same business together to interact and try to move something forward, it didn't matter what it was. And I think that another way that you can interact and do things is, I was glad to be on the Vail Chamber Board of Directors for 8 or 9 or 10 years, and my good friend Billy Suarez, the one that talked me into it. But you interact with similar people in different businesses, as well as the people that we have come to some of those meetings to interact and talk to us, which is a learning process. So I think that those are the two areas that I've always felt is, the leadership that we all showed by doing those things. And you don't go to just have fun. You do it to accomplish things.
So I think the community leadership to me is a little intimidating, not for me, but when I'm talking to people about it, I feel like they're intimidated sometimes because it's always big C community, and I try to throw it back at them and ask them, what communities are you a part of? Like, are you in the ski community here? And if you are, do you think that you're helping make the community more of an open-gated community where people can participate and be a part of your experience in your community? Or are you locking them off and not allowing them to really participate? Are you hiding your secret stashes, which for like your ski stashes, everybody's got them. But if it's not skiing, is it the restaurant community? Are you inviting new restaurateurs or young people to see what the community leadership part of the restaurant community looks like? Do our employees have access to that, or are we just having meetings that are amongst the highest level of it? So I think that just showing people what the leadership is doing is important, like exposure to it. And yeah, I try to ask myself which communities I'm actively involved in, which communities I have fun in, and those are the ones that I want to share. So
I think that the ability to live in a valley, a county with 55,000 people in towns of 7 and 9 and 11, every person in this room and up here, and we each have such an incredible opportunity to have an influence by just giving our time. And to Will's point, when we talked about him coming back, I mean, I spent more than a couple years on a couple boards here, and didn't want him scared off because of what I did. It's like, you do what you want. When I got to a point where I had time and we were clicking along and things, I joined everything I wanted to and could, because it's, what I grew up wanting to do, from parents' influence to grade school. And we talked about this earlier. My grade school has left a large impact on me, and I think about it weekly, if not more. And it was all about giving back to the community, and naturally assumed I would get more than I gave, and it has always worked that way. Not that that was the motivation, but that was absolutely part of it. But I think there's so much opportunity. Come on, to to do what your passion is and follow it and make such a big difference in this community. So it's one of the joys of living here. And leaving here, and being somewhere else, traveling back to here, with the exception of a few places in Europe, traveling back to here makes me realize, we got it really good here. I mean, as bad as we may think, and as horrible as it may be, and housing and employees and price of pizza and gas and things. I mean, this is a pretty special place. I mean, we really, truly are blessed to be able to say we live here and lead here and work here and live here. I mean, it's pretty special. So, I had a framed 8x10 picture on my desk for about 6 or 7 years with 4-inch block, bold letters that just said the word give, and it faced away from me. And I feel horrible saying this, but I always felt it was interesting how many people came in and just looked at it and got it, and how many people came in and went, what is that? And I thought, yeah, all right, you're off the team. Like, it was like immediate, like, okay, you got 5 minutes, I got no time for you at all. So, but I mean, it's just if it weren't for generations of people before us and generations of people to come feeling the way, that way, we'd be lost. But I think we're in a really good spot, actually.
Kim?
Well, I'd say community leadership is about finding something you're passionate about and figuring out how to plug in to make your voice be heard. I think everybody's voice is important in this community, and there's just so many opportunities to get involved, whether it's with the business association, within a business, with the town, with the county, regionally, with any of the nonprofits. There's just so many opportunities to really make a difference. And like others have said, we do have a microcosm here. It's a very special place because it is small enough where we can make things happen. And it takes collaboration, and it takes listening and understanding, and finding those opportunities for shared vision where we can create alignment and get things done together.
Good. All right. How do you identify your next generation of leaders in your business? So, is it mentoring them, or do you have a program, or is it just kind of a one-off with someone who comes across as exceptional? It doesn't have to be within your family. It can just be someone who's younger than you that'll be around a little bit longer, so you want to give them that opportunity, that kind of thing. And going into, if that is something that's a part of your business, do you have a succession plan for that next generation to be successful here in Vail?
I mean, I think on a business level, speaking for myself only, I don't actually think we do a good job of identifying leaders within our staff and stuff, and I think it's one of the goals that we have together, but I'm only speaking for myself. I think you agree with that, but I'm not asking you to. And yes, we have a succession plan that ends on April 16th, 2023.
Oh.
There
we go. Nobody's counting, though.
What will you be doing, though?
I mean, I think part of the excitement of getting back, at least for me, and I think for both of us, was, that we have a path and we have a timeline and we have a checklist, and we're already behind, and Will's only been back 8 days or 7 days, but that's to be, expected. But yeah, I mean, I think we've put out a good plan together of what the next steps are and a timeline to it, and it'll be a challenge to keep on. Speaking for myself, it'll be a challenge to keep on it because I'm not actually good at that sometimes, but I'm looking forward to checking in on that regularly, and yeah.
I know a German who can help you.
Hey, Brian, while you were talking, there's a beautiful rainbow. Seriously. Just, yeah. Well, I mean, we very so there's two things to this. From a business perspective, we have a very purposeful process for really every higher position to create formal succession plan. And sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't, but I think it's something that we very purposefully do. From a family perspective, I feel super lucky that it's there, but it's just that it's just lucky that I happen to have a son who married a girl that even really want to do this, right? I mean, there's the world is wide open. This generation can do anything they want, and there's really no guarantees, and really not necessarily even an expectation that they would really want to do what we did really for our lives. We did what was really right for us and what we really wanted to do. So it's really lucky, and now it's my job not to really screw this up so that we can get sufficiently out of the way so they can actually take this thing and make it their own. And that's you have already a date. I have to talk to you about that.
He won't commit to a date,
what
let's be
happens
real.
on April the 17th, 2023 exactly? No.
Big party. Anyone else?
I mean, I feel like, so I work full-time at Colorado Mountain College now, teaching sustainability studies, and that is my succession plan for the entire valley. Because these are young people who want to make a difference in our mountain communities, and they are ready to do so. And there's just so much passion, and these young people can use a little coaching and mentoring and connecting and networking, and I feel like that's a great role for me to be doing now with my career. So look out, everyone. All these young people coming up are going to do great things. Yeah.
Anything?
I'm going to jump in, and since I have a 22-year-old that just graduated from CU, I'm going to pass along his information to you, Ken, because this doesn't work for a restaurant business. He had a double major, environmental studies and evolutionary biology ecology. I mean, I can hardly say that. But he hasn't completed 4 credits yet. He needs an internship. And I think he should go work at your place.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they hire 35 interns every summer.
Well,
Yeah.
I did talk to somebody there because they'd called me about something else that I'd asked about, and they said that they might have something in the winter. Is
In the
that-
winter too, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Thought so as far as succession plan in the restaurant business for me, I don't think so. I'll leave that for Drew with your child.
Yeah. Growing up, there was never any pressure on me to come in and run the restaurants. I went to school, studied engineering, and that's what I wanted to do. I love to solve problems and figure out how the world around me works. The way that it came that this was the best thing and something that I wanted to do was sort of natural, and just all the circumstances fell into place there. As for a succession plan to keep it in the family, my son is only 2 years old, so we're not going to address that problem today. And for just my staff in general, what I look for are people that go over and above what is asked about them or asked of them, and also just them even coming up with ideas on what would make Los Amigos or Russell's better. Even just having that, being able to put their neck out there and say, like, hey, why do you do it this way? Or it would be better to do it this way. Like, that's the stuff that I'm looking for internally to see who would be the next manager. Through just talking with other people, like, it's, I'm gonna get this wrong, but it's not like who is your manager, it's who is your number 2 is probably the most important, so that if something were to happen to that manager, like, who's gonna be the next succession coming in? Because your manager has to be, stacked and ready to go, but who's that number 2? That's the biggest thing. And so whoever really steps up and shows that they want it, because I know a lot of people are here to just ski, and they fall into that, behavior. And our bartender at Russell's has been there for 23 years, and he's got the best job in the world, where he doesn't have to be at work until 4:15 and works 4 days a week and makes a ton of money and can ski and play golf every single day. Like, that's an awesome job. But I don't think that there's any desire for him to change that and to, move up. And if there is, then come talk to me. But so yeah, it's just who really goes that extra mile almost without having to ask them. Like, those are the people that really stand out in my mind, is like, oh yeah, this person's got a good head on their shoulders.
Yeah, on that note, one thing when I first started at the hotel that impressed me is you guys, or we now, really listen to our employees. When someone comes to us and says, hey, listen, I'm unhappy unless this or this happens, most of the time, if you just change those things, they're pretty happy. And sometimes it's just working with them to get to that next step. We've had quite a few people get promoted just because they've made it known that that's their goal. So I think just open lines of communication, and our executive team is pretty good about meeting about these things on a weekly basis and talking about it. And that's a testament to, Johannes' leadership style is just very open, and I think everyone can kind of learn from that. You're doing a good job.
Tomorrow's another day.
I need a raise.
All right, so our final question that I gave you guys, and then we'll go to some questions from the group here, but what would you say are the right ingredients for having a successful business in Vail? Are there any additional ingredients that help make a family-owned business or a resort business successful?
Someone else go first?
Communication. I think we do our best when we're talking regularly, and not just now with Will having grown up, but going back to 500 employees and 5 locations. And Bob reminded me this morning, that we're part of a program, and I don't actually know why we're part of a program. And Bob actually said something this morning. I'm like, you're right. The only reason we're part of this program is that at some point we had 6 locations and 500 employees and an HR director that got us into this thing. And, the ability to sit across a table or now across a screen and communicate regularly is I think a key to growing successfully and listening and dialogue. And, God love her, Sarah Frank. Smartest person I've ever met. And, she had no problem communicating with me. Regardless of what direction it was, she was clear, like, no, you're out of your mind, we're not doing this, or yes, this is a great idea. So I think communication is really the biggest thing for us to continue to grow and successfully.
I can agree with that, in that I'm going to tell another good story in that I always had managers meeting once a month, and up at Los Amigos, well, it was not quite as necessary down at Russell's, but at Los Amigos, since we were open for lunch, we'd have our meeting early in the morning. However, one night I'm at home, I'm probably just getting ready to go to bed, 10 o'clock, 10:30, something like that, and my phone rings. And the bartender, Tex, calls me, he says, is the 6-inch rule still apply? I said, it's snowing out, I bet. He said, yeah. I said, you know the rule. That morning, I'm in the lift line, and he's 3 people behind me, because the meeting is postponed, because we're gonna go skiing, and we can do this meeting tomorrow. And that was what we always did. We always had to have some fun, but we communicated. And I gave him a lot of credit, because I wouldn't have been into the meeting, and I was the one running the thing.
Yeah, communication is definitely really high up there. Michael touched on this earlier, but it is surrounding yourself with awesome people at the same time. Russell's has not changed a lot in the past 15 years. We've got the same menu that we've had, and we know it brings in a lot of people that come back, and we've got a lot of the same staff members. And I think that that's a huge testament to just having a successful restaurant in Vail, is just keeping the people that support the restaurant and operate the restaurant as happy as they could be, and support them so that they can, again, they're the ones that are taking grenades in the trenches every single day and dealing with entitled customers that, you know, I'm sure everybody is accustomed to being in Vail. And so, yeah, just keeping the good people around is the best way to perpetuate a successful restaurant going forward, because ideas mean nothing unless you can actually execute those ideas.
I would also agree communication is extremely important. And also partnering with all the other businesses in town. I was just thinking back to one of the things I think that made my dad's business so successful, and that was, we weren't always just in it for ourselves, but we were in it for the guest experience, in the fact that we were almost like a concierge. If we didn't have the right pair of ski pants because we were out of the size and color that somebody wanted, we would call all of the other shops around and say, hey, do you have this size and color? And we would do that until we found the right fit for somebody and send them there. And so it was like a small ecosystem of all of these businesses partnering to, you know, make sure that there was this kind of level of guest experience, and that wouldn't happen without communication and trust, and really partnering with one another.
Yeah. Well, I have a little different take on this. I think one thing I learned is to be at all successful, we have to go into it with big dose of realism, and that to me looks like you better be able to withstand the first couple of years, knowing that you will probably not nearly be as successful as you thought you would be really at the beginning, that there will be many hurdles to overcome that you hadn't really anticipated at all, and hopefully you have kind of a financial kind of plan that can really withstand that. But if you do, and then you kind of can kind of stick with it, things will really turn around. It can be really successful. But I don't think we have started a single thing yet that where I figured any of those things out at the beginning. And if I just made more mistakes at the beginning, and I did things right, and we were able to just kind of grind through it and kind of get them right over time, and then and then it works. But I think that's particularly difficult in our resort setting, and in today's world, which is needs results really pretty quickly, and it is very impatient world in many ways, and so that is I think is really required to if you start a business out, you need some kind of long-term plan to success, and don't hope that the world was waiting for you to open your door and they're just kind of all start rolling in. There's people who know how to do this, but I'm not one of them.
Anyone else?
I think it's a little bit more exotic of an ingredient, but understanding a guest coming into your restaurant and the pathway that potentially is to them joining our community, I think is an important aspect. One of our current managers came to Beaver Creek for the first time as a guest, on just traveling through town. He wasn't on like a vacation, but he's now living here and has a wife and a kid, and I think that any person who's coming to town is kind of on that path. It's such an amazing place that maybe it's just their vacation, but for a lot of these people, second home's a possibility, and understanding that they might eventually be a community member is huge, and showing them the things that you want to is important, I think, for a successful business, so.
Anyone else? All right, great. Well, thank you so much. That's all I have for you, but if there's any questions from the group here, anything that kind of came up, any themes or anything else you'd want this group to, Bob, you got a good one?
Bob Baselli is not allowed to ask any questions.
Exactly. I'm sorry, can you just come up and say, I'm sorry, feels very town council-ish, but. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your speech today. They were very they motivate me a lot. And I would like to ask you, if you would give an advice to a person who is finishing school or college or university that wants to be an entrepreneur as you were once, what will be that advice for you and for anyone that can participate in this speech?
One thing that I was told when I was first starting out was to create your own personal board of directors. And that means just, finding those people that are mentors for you or in your industry that can help you to answer questions for you, that you can call upon just with informal, phone calls or whatever it might be, that can help guide you. So just a small group of your own personal board of directors, I would say, is a great thing to have when you're just starting.
I would say don't be afraid to fail, and Michael said he had heard it from Ron, so that is what I would say, but I would also tell you that that's the best advice you're gonna get. That I got the same advice 38 years ago, and up until 10 years ago had a 3-person group of peers and mentors that I would call regularly. I don't use that anymore, and I don't even know why I don't, but for 30-plus years, I had a small group of people that advised me regularly and had no problem making sure that they knew that they were strongly opinionated that I was crazy thinking what I was about to do. So I think that's the best advice you're gonna get, personally.
I'd also say be willing to pivot. Sometimes you have an idea and it doesn't work out, but that failure or challenge could turn into something completely different. Just had a friend sell his business for $3.5 million as a result of that. So just be open to new ideas if maybe that first one isn't quite working out.
Yeah, part of the reason that the first tech company that I built failed is we did not pivot fast enough. There are a lot of other reasons, but that was a big reason. Again, the biggest thing that I learned, I mentioned it earlier, is just start as small as you can, implement it, see how it works, learn from it, and by that time, by the time you're there to raise money or actually implement it, you've got a very good understanding of what the demand is and the problem that you are solving without having spent a ton of money, and then just do it. The lean startup method is, if you want to actually learn more about it, I think that's valuable, but the board of directors is probably more important.
I'm gonna offer that, if you look it up in the dictionary, under L, it's called luck. And I feel I had luck when I came here, because I was gonna go on through. And I got my job as a busboy at the Red Lion, became a maitre d'. After 2.5 years, I went to work for Mr. Ron Riley. And I worked for him for 6, 7, 8 years, and when 1985 came along and the opportunity to buy Los Amigos, he looked at me and said, do you want to join me in that? I said, yes. I wrote my check. Two years after that, Michael, do you want to become involved in owning some commercial real estate? I said, yes. Wrote my check. 2 years after that, 1989, we opened Russell's because Ron owns the building, and we booted out the Orr House. Some of you all might remember that. And he said, would you like to join me in this? I said, yep. I didn't go on vacation for years because I didn't have any money. But I was lucky, I took the risk, and Mr. Unriley was an entrepreneur. So I was lucky when I fell in a great location.
You could spin that and say, be open-minded.
Jump on opportunities that are presented to you.
Any other questions from the group? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming out here and sharing a part of yourselves with us. We know it's sometimes really hard to do, but we really appreciate it. I could tell from the smiles on people's faces that they were really taking this in. Just a couple quick housekeeping things, or else my coworkers will be upset with me, is that we have PRIMA service is happening. It's a part of this whole programming. It's another offshoot of it. It's a way for us to reward and honor our employees and value them. So we have a portal up that's called PRIMAVail.com, where you can go on and you can nominate whoever you would like. Even if it's at another business or your own business or yourself, that's totally fine too. Sometimes we all need a little self-love. But we have extended it to September 30th, and thanks to the Town of Vail and Vail Mountain and a lot of our small businesses here in town, we have some great prizes for those that are nominated. And everyone who's nominated does get something, so no one walks away empty-handed. So please do that. We really want them to feel great going into the off-season after this crazy summer and fall that it's turning out to be. We think everyone has weathered the storm really fabulously. So can't thank you enough. So thank you so much for coming. Have a nice evening.